What is up, guys? My name is Lex. In today's video, we are going to be breaking down a hand between Garrett Adelstein and Andy Stacks. This hand took place back in 2019 at Live at the Bike. It was the $1 million cash game. It's a huge pot, and it gets pretty crazy at the end.
Two pair,
Huh?
22.
That hand could have been super big and ballooned.
Sometimes you wait and you get the king 3 off and you hit 2 pair.
Garrett with another 3
And
bet.
you just keep checking all the way down.
And Bill with the flat call with ace queen.
They're bluffing it. They just keep on betting and betting. Keep on betting.
Cold's call.
So this hand begins playing 7-handed with mostly crushers. Andy decides to raise it up here in the cutoff with 8-9 offsuit to $600. Now, a little bit of background information. Andy was getting crushed this session. I don't know exactly how much he was down, but he was down a lot of money. Now, 7-handed against very good players, 8-9 offsuit is probably a hand you just want to be folding from the cutoff, especially when you have a super tough player next to act, which is Garrett. Well, Garrett kind of picks up on this fact that maybe Andy's spewing a little bit, getting a little bit out of line, and Garrett decides to 3-bet the ace-jack offsuit on the button. Now the action's over here on Bill in the small blind, who decides to cold call the 3-bet. Now, I've said this before, I'm sure you guys have all heard this before, but cold calling 3-bets is probably not the best option. There's a ton of bad things that can happen when you cold call 3-bets out of position. 1, the initial raiser could 4-bet and you're put into a really weird spot. 2, if you cold call here, another player could squeeze behind you and then you just kind of lost out that money. Also, by cold calling, you're kind of just putting your hand in a certain range where it's good, but it's not really good. So if Bill had aces or kings or ace-king, we would assume that he would probably cold 4-bet in this situation. But given the fact that he just cold called this 3-bet, that means he probably doesn't have aces, kings, and ace-king. He probably has medium-sized pocket pairs, ace-queen, ace-jack suited. That way your opponents can kind of play somewhat face-up against you when you cold call these bets. So I actually think Bill has a great hand to put in a cold 4-bet versus Andy's cutoff open and Garrett's button 3-bet. I think Bill could raise it up here to $7,000, even $8,000, given the fact that he's out of position and there's a lot of dead money in the pot. But Bill Klein is a billionaire. He can do whatever he wants with his money. He decides to call. Back over here to Andy, who calls with 8-9 offsuit. Now, I think a pre-flop raise is a little bit too loose. Definitely calling here out of position is too loose, but Andy's on a stream, he's down money. He wants to try to get in there and get some of his money back. So they end up going 3 ways to the flop in a 3-bet pot.
Ace queen has Garrett dominated, and he's gonna come and make the call. 9-8. Garrett with top pair, top kicker. Backdoor nut flush draw. Half the size of the pot is what he feels is best with the bet of 3,500. That 3,500 gets
Jack, 9, 5, 2 spades. Garrett flops top pair, top kicker. Andy flops middle pair, and Bill completely whiffs. Well, they both check over to Garrett, who puts out a C-bet of $3,500 on this flop, which I think is a great bet. I actually think he could go a little bit bigger here just because he's multi-way. He flopped a monster, and there's so many hands that can call him here. Straight draws, flush draws, weaker Jack-X hands, 9X hands can call as well. So I think Garrett, $3,500 bet seems fine to me. Even a little bit bigger would work as well. Well, the action's now on Bill. He cold called a 3-bet with ace-queen offsuit. He completely whiffs this board. He has Garrett betting into 2 people. I think this is a spot you could just let go of ace-queen. You don't have a spade in your hand. You do have some backdoor equity, maybe picking up a straight draw. You have 2 overcards, but possibly you could be completely crushed if Garrett has ace-jack and an ace comes. If Garrett has ace-king and an ace comes, you're kind of screwed in those situations. If a queen comes, it could bring in a straight. So I think Bill just has an easy fold in this situation, but Bill came here to play. He doesn't want to give up that easy, and he makes the call. Now, Andy's actually in an interesting spot here with his second pair. He does have a backdoor straight and flush draw that really aren't too good. With Garrett betting on the flop and then with Bill calling, I actually think Andy could fold his hand. Now, I'm going kind of with the more nittier, tighter, I guess, explanation here. I think obviously, this is a stream game. These players are much more experienced than me. They have much more money than me. They're playing a game much bigger than I've ever played in my entire life. So obviously, things are going through their brain that I don't even really understand. But just as, like, you know, just thinking about it, I feel like once there's a 3-bet and a call and then a bet and a call, Andy maybe could just get rid of his 9. The things that suck about Andy's hand is if he does hit another 9, he potentially could be drawing dead against pocket jacks, which is somewhat rare, but could happen. Also, if Andy picks up 2 pair with an 8, it brings in queen 10, which is a very common straight draw on this flop. So I think Andy could get rid of his hand, but Andy decides to call, and they end up going 3 ways to the turn.
Called in 2 spots. Andy now with trip 9s. Huge equity hold over Garrett. 3-bet pot, hard to put these players on a 9, but Andy does have one. And Garrett gets there with the nut flush. We're seeing massive pot after massive pot, and Garrett double checking to make sure he has the ace of spades.
Art phone.
15,000.
Need some tilt food.
Bet of 15,000.
What am I doing today?
Can we call service, please?
Huh?
You got it.
What am I doing today, Sammy? It's making all the wrong.
Service, please. Service.
Still a no spade. And Andy behind gives it up.
With $17,000 in the middle, the turn card is the 9 of spades. So this is an action-packed card. It gives Andy trips, and it also now gives Garrett the nut flush draw. Bill checks, Andy checks, and Garrett decides to check back on this turn card, which some of you may be thinking, why would he be checking back a hand as strong as top pair, top kicker, and the nut flush draw? But I think this is a great check back by Garrett. One, you got 2 callers on the flop, so it's very likely one or even both of your opponents could have now gotten there with a better hand here on the turn. Bill could have a flush draw, Andy could have a flush draw, Bill could have a 9, Andy could have a 9. It's also sometimes possible that Bill could have a hand like pocket queens. It's kind of unlikely, but it's possible as well. So I think Garrett is checking back this turn card as just somewhat of a pot control as well. And he has the ace of spades, so he's not worried about another spade coming off here on the river. So they end up going to the final card, which is the 7 of spades. So now 4 spades on the board, and Garrett improves to the nut flush. Andy had trips on the turn, and unfortunately, he gets sucked out on the river. Bill checks this river, and Andy checks this river, and Garrett value bets now $15,000 into a $17,000 pot. Now, this is a very big bet, but the problem in this situation is that Garrett's just really never going to be bluffing too often here into 2 players. I mean, maybe Garrett is sick enough to find some bluffs in this certain situation, but in all honesty, he's probably just going to have a spade like the king of spades or the ace of spades a lot of the time here. So I feel like this bet is fine. It's somewhat of a polarized bet sizing of saying I have the ace of spades or I have the king of spades or nothing at all, but I think players can kind of realize that Garrett's probably not going to be bluffing very often on this board, but it is Garrett Adelstein. He finds crazy bluffs in all sorts of wild places. Well, Bill gets rid of his ace queen, and now the action's back over here on Andy, who has trip 9s, but then improves to an 8 high flush on the river, and he's facing a $15,000 bet from Garrett.
And Andy goes all in. Andy goes all in. Repping a full house since he has a 9. Or repping a straight flush since he has an 8 of spades in his hand. He can rep 10 8 of spades And he can rep all the full houses. And Andy going for this one.
19, another 20.
Andy is
70.
super stuck, but going for this one like a beast with a massive overbet. An all-in of 78,900 from Andy.
82, 84, 86, 88, 90, 92, 94, and 94 plus 4, 98. Oh, iconic, please. Okay, 92. So 40 here, 30, 70, 72, and 8. No, I did not yet. That's
How
8
much heart
here.
does Andy have to go for it
80,
here
90,
after being
98,
stuck
99,
in this double
99,
stream?
After thinking it over, Andy decides to jam all in as a bluff. He goes all in for $78,000 here on this river. Just such a sick play. He realizes that his hand is no good, trips are no good, the 8 of spades is no good, and he decides to turn that hand into a bluff and put Garrett into the blender, into max pain here with the ace high flush. I love this play by Andy. He correctly realized that Garrett has probably only going to have a couple hands in this situation. He's probably going to have the ace of spades for the ace high flush, the king of spades for the king high flush, or Garrett's going to have a complete bluff, and it doesn't matter what Andy does, either call or raise all in. He wants to put Garrett into a really tough spot just because Garrett's range is somewhat capped here. Garrett checked back on the turn, which he's probably not going to do very often with full houses, like Jack 9, pocket jacks, pocket 5s. So Andy kind of realizes here that Garrett is somewhat capped to just having the ace of spades and the king of spades as well. Well, Andy has the best combination to turn into a bluff here. The reason that this is the best combination is because he has a 9 in his hand. So he blocks hands like Jack 9 suited, pocket 9s, and 9-7 suited that Garrett could potentially have. He also has a very key card. The key card is the 8 of spades. He blocks 2 straight flushes that are possible on this board. 8-6 of spades and 8-10 of spades. By having this 8 of spades, he is the only person in this hand that can have the nuts. The nuts is 8-10 of spades for a straight flush. The second nuts is 8-6 of spades for the straight flush as well. Now, Garrett 3-bet pre-flop, he probably won't have 8-6 of spades or 8-10 of spades very often, and Andy decides to exploit that and put him into a max pain spot here, going all in for $78,000. Just a sick play, and honestly, you know, it takes a lot of guts to do this. It takes even more guts to do this on the stream for $78,000, and especially up against a crusher in Garrett Adelstein. Well, the action's over here on Garrett. He's got the ace high flush on a paired board, and Andy check jams all in. Andy's down a bunch of money. Is he bluffing here? Is he value betting a full house or a straight flush? What is Garrett going to do?
Garrett seems shocked. He's in disbelief. He has enough flush. But the board is paired. And not only does he have enough flush, he has a jack blocker to Jack 9 suited.
Pretty good one here to put some more money in for a few different reasons.
That's what Garrett means when he says that statement. He blocks Jack 9 of clubs. Pretty important. There's only one other combo of Jack 9 suited. But if Andy has offsuit combinations, there's a lot of combinations of full houses here.
Guess I'm gonna fold.
That's a fold, right?
And Andy gets that one through. What an insane bluff by Andy, and he gets that one through.
That is it for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, and until next time, I'll see ya.